Hey, do you know what your emotions and power tools have in common? Stick around because you're going to find out. Now, I have been working with power tools most of my life, ever since I was a little kid. I had a friend whose father was in construction. We were always doing projects around the house. We added thousands of square feet to the house, built a swimming pool, all these different things growing up. So I was very familiar with the whole world of tools, power tools, right? And I've got just a couple of the tools that I own right here that I want to showcase, but power tools and tools in general operate a lot the same way that our emotions can operate. So for example, here's a finish nailer that I've got, and the air comes in, you got the little trigger, it shoots the nail out, right? Over here, we've got this little sander, nice little belt sander. Again, just grab onto it, plug it in, pull the little trigger right here, the belt starts running, doing its thing. This, you can put various tubes of either caulk or adhesive in here, and you put it in, ratchet that down, pull the trigger, and then it will start to ratchet this to push that caulk out. This here is a tile saw, so enjoy doing some tile work on occasion. And you've got the different parts. You can flip it on, you flip the little switch on, and then you can cut your pieces. The whole table actually slides with this piece and to cut that tile. So what does all this have to do with emotions, and how does all this tie into business? Well, really, each one of these power tools or tools has a very specific job that it does. And I could just have this sitting out for years and it would do absolutely nothing. But the moment I come in and the situation is right and the circumstances are right and I pull the trigger, it does the expected job. Same with this. I can pull the trigger all day long, nothing happens. But if I've got nails in it, I've got the source of power, in this case the air hose connected with pressure, I pull that trigger, nothing will still happen until the safety is pushed in. If I engage the safety and all the parts and pieces are in the right place and I pull that trigger, it will do its job. Again, the sander, I could just pull that trigger all day long, nothing happens. Nothing happens until the situation is right or the circumstances are right and the trigger is pulled. Our emotions are the same way. For us, we all have all of these different emotions that we feel. Now, someone can pull a trigger that might trigger you, but it doesn't work to turn on that emotion or to turn on that emotional response unless the circumstances are right, the conditions are right, and that trigger gets pulled. So maybe you've heard somebody say something like, I don't know, they might say, oh man, I could never do that. Or they'd say, oh, they make me so mad. Or I hate it when this happens. Or we see oftentimes people are really nice, calm, normal people. They get in their vehicle and they start driving and the conditions are now right. They're in their vehicle, driving down the road. Somebody does something that is really minor, like maybe they pull in front of them and they just have a bit of a meltdown. And again, the conditions were right and the trigger happened. If you were walking down a walking path and someone walked faster than you and walked in front of you, you probably wouldn't have that same reaction even though a similar trigger happened. Perhaps you've heard that saying about our brains being two different entities. One is the rider and sitting on the elephant, the other is the elephant. The rider is the intellectual, analytical side, the elephant is the emotional side. And I believe it was Jonathan Haidt that made that really famous in his writing. But that whole concept really plays well here. So we've got within ourselves all of those emotions, and the emotions push us in the directions that we're going to go. And so if we don't realize it, we have all of these emotional responses that have been built into us throughout our lives, and growing up, our bodies learn from their experiences, and we quite literally have emotional responses that are just like this. That emotional response, when the power is engaged, when the safety's been pushed in, when the trigger happens, a very specific emotional response will happen every single time. And we may not even realize that our bodies have that programming in it to respond a specific way when a certain thing happens. But when we're in the heat of the moment, we think that it's just the way that we are. The cool thing is there's been all kinds of research and study trying to figure out what can we do to help change the way that we're programmed. And people maybe thought, well, that's just the way I am. I just get angry when that happens. And that's true in the moment. But unlike a power tool that's been built and you can't really change the way it functions, our emotions are set up so that we can actually go in and make adjustments. So people have developed a multitude of different modalities, systems, tools to help us reprogram that emotion so that we can be able to change and not be trapped as a prisoner to what our body wants to feel. So here's a short list of different tools that I'm aware of, and again, this is only a short list. There's so many different ways to go about this, but here's a few for you. So first, NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, is one system. There's another called cognitive behavior therapy. Another one, EMDR, is eye movement desensitization and reprogramming. So again, that's EMDR. There's the Havening technique. There's semantic experiencing. You've got mindfulness and meditation that you can do. There is Reiki that also can help with unpacking some of those past emotions, and they often use that in terms of trauma, is where I've heard that a lot connected. Something as simple as just having more gratitude, expressing gratitude, writing gratitude, each one of those can also assist in reprogramming some of this emotional response. There's also hypnotherapy that people have used to try and assist with this. There's MAP, Make Anything Possible, and the list just goes on and on and on. So one experience I had probably almost 20 years ago now, I was in my early 20s and I was friends with this family, and we would be hanging out, different siblings all together, and I noticed quite by accident that if I said just a few words, just like this one sentence, that these two siblings, and they were like in early 20s, late teens, these two siblings, if I said this one sentence, they started just behaving kind of weird and started kind of feeding off from each other and teasing each other and just kind of going at each other, picking at each other in kind of a entertaining but funny and silly kind of way. And I was like, oh wow, that was really strange. And then I thought, how is it that I could just say one sentence and all of a sudden, boom, this thing happens? And I thought about it, and the next time we were together, I tried it again, and I said something very similar, and sure enough, the two of them, zoop, and they just started behaving in this very specific way, and my curiosity was really piqued, so I tried it again, and sure enough, if I said that one sentence, both these individuals got triggered in such a way that they started behaving totally different. Now, we could be in a fairly calm, quiet setting, and if I just made that statement or said those things, they would go after it, and the whole atmosphere would change, almost like that, right? It was really quite intriguing to me, and my introduction to this whole world of how our emotions can control us and how you can go out and literally have somebody say something, and yes, they truly do make you mad in one sense, because your body is programmed in that circumstance when it hears that thing to behave a certain way. But we don't have to be that way. So I've spent a lot of time thinking about in my own personal life and trying to share with others this idea of we're all programmed this certain way, but we don't have to stay programmed that certain way. We can change the programming. And when we change the programming, it's going to help us in our relationships. It's going to help us reach our goals. It's going to help us do better in business. Have you ever heard someone who said, oh, I could never pick up the phone and call somebody and do a cold call? They've been programmed to have that emotional response based on their past experiences. Using some of these techniques, you can make it possible to overcome that emotional response. Now, I'm not suggesting cold calling. I think that it's one of the less effective ways to do business in many aspects, and I don't appreciate cold calling, so I'm not using that as an example of what to do, just as an example of a negative emotional response that can be reprogrammed so that you can be more effective at achieving what you're wanting, whether it's your fitness, whether it's your relationships, whether it's financial goals. Oftentimes, the problems when the mental, intellectual, and analytical side of the brain runs into a barrier and the emotional side comes in and says, no, you're not doing that, you can come at it, reprogram, and the two can work together so you can achieve, you can do more, you can be happier, you can be more unified within yourself and achieve more success.